Welcome to the Resonance Radio Podcast. Mic check.
Check, check, check.
We got signals.
Wonderful.
All right, we got some candles. We got some tea.
Water?
Tea going on here. Did you already have some tea?
Not yet. No. I like these cups.
That one is a jade cup that you're drinking out of.
Beautiful. Cheers.
Cheers. I got from Ron John at 108 Treasures in Nevada City.
Nice.
And this one was handmade by somebody. He gifted it to me when I served tea the first time with the tea crew at High Vibes Music Festival a little over a year ago.
Nice.
I'm forgetting the guy's name, but I should know it. Sweet little teacup.
I think this is alabaster. Or is that jade?
I was told it was jade, but you tell me. I don't know. I'm not
Let's go with
still an
jade.
expert. Huh?
Let's go with jade.
It's like a blonde jade or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. So we're looking at the Monad desktop app here.
Isn't that pretty?
Spinning through space.
Oh, yeah. What about the two trees? Where are the two trees? This is one I like. It's funny, I'm just reading this book here, actually, The Lost Gospel of the Earth. And I'm just in this section about the Garden of Eden, talking about the two trees, the tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Mm.
And I don't know, I mean, I'm susceptible to these sort of
Interesting.
thoughts of metaphors and things like that. But look at that. Here's two trees. They're notably different. And if I had to assign correspondences, I would call this one the tree of life, the one that's the light phase of photosynthesis. And this one actually qualifies as the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which you gain through eating. And this is the digestive system.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I mean, it's another
cool. I like that.
correspondences with no real proof.
Sure.
But I think it's got some merit to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So the tree of life would be the lungs, which also contain the heart planet. That's a heart planet there.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, just doing a little last minute rejiggering live on stream. Well, we're not live, so.
Not yet.
Cool. All right. Well, Keith, we were talking about a whole bunch of stuff, and then we were like, we should talk about this on the podcast, and we just kept talking and talking.
I know, right? We exhausted the subject, but
let's see. The gist of, I mean, so one thing we were talking about is your book that you are writing.
the living solar system.
The Living Solar System.
Do I have a copy? No.
.com. And one of the challenges with communicating your idea of that the solar system is a living being and that the Earth is the heart.
It's not just a living being; it's a living organism.
Living organism, and that the heart is the heart planet. I mean, the Earth is the heart planet
Earth
of the
is
living
a heart planet, yeah.
of this living organism.
So the Earth is not an organism itself, like Gaia used to sort of suggest.
Mm-hmm.
It's an organ system within the photosynthetic body of the solar system.
Mm-hmm. And so you're looking at the solar system as like the whole of the organism.
Yes, not the Earth. The Earth is not a whole in the sense of an organism,
Mm-hmm.
but there's subholes within holes,
Uh-huh.
and so a subhole would be like an organ system.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And that is a cool idea.
Thank you.
That's as an idea, that's like it has a self-subsisting, self-existing whole to it, like as a meme or as a meme of an idea.
It's a hypothesis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
more than that, I guess. I mean, it's an image, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to me, just the elements that are there, it's not even hypothesis. It's kind of the to me is a reference to science where you come up with an idea that's you can't really prove it, and then you come up with experiments to try to prove it or disprove it, and then if your experiments substantiate it, then you can call it a theory, you know.
Yep.
But this isn't really even, to me, isn't even really in the realm of scientific theory or hypothesis. It's more of just like an elegant way of describing the whole of life in the solar system. And I mean, just planets don't just exist all by themselves floating through space.
Right.
Planet by definition is something that orbits around a central sun, or center of gravitational mass, or center, gravitational orbital center. You know, a planet is something that orbits around something else in a solar system. You know,
and it's, you and I are having this discussion. We're talking about the solar system and the Earth and all these astronomical bodies, but the fact that, you know, this wouldn't be going on if there weren't people, in other words, paying attention to this and hearing our words and us talking. So we are significant also. It's like we are part of the biosphere.
Are you saying that this podcast is only happening because there's a listener somewhere in the theoretical future who is,
it'd be nice to have a listener,
paying attention?
Actually. Yeah. I imagine listeners, you know, I do, you know.
Does the Resonance Radio podcast exist if no one's listening?
Right. Does a podcast fall in the woods? And wait a minute, how does that go? Something like that, yeah.
But you were
hey,
saying,
did we hit this bell here? Oh yeah, you did. But did you hit it the second time? For ideas that resonate?
we have said the word resonance many times since, or have we? Maybe we haven't. Yeah.
Yep.
You were saying something though.
Well, I was just saying that holism. We were talking about holism,
right?
And it's not just the holism of the solar system, but it's also the holism of the fact that we are part of that whole. Humans, not just the Earth, not just the biosphere, but us humans on it, and we are part of the biosphere. And so, where does life stop? Right? Does it stop at our skin? Does it stop at the atmosphere that we're breathing? And that atmosphere includes the sun providing photosynthesis for the trees, which generate the atmosphere that we're breathing. And just the whole thing is just all tied up together as a living system.
And then even gravity, like, Unzinger's bringing attention to this idea that even gravity, like in order to define the big G constant of gravity, you have to take into account all of the mass of the whole universe.
Yep.
In order to even, and I would add, so this to me is more in the realm of hypothesis. I would add in this idea of, in mathematics, there's this problem with the three-body problem.
Yep.
You know, like just the math around gravity, and if you have masses in this, like, imaginary void, the current math around gravity and stuff, as soon as you add, if you have two bodies, the math can handle, stability. But as soon as you add a third body, the current math, eventually one of them gets thrown out, which is the three-body problem.
Yep.
But maybe that's because it's not taking into account the mass of the universe. And so if you, like, that's to some degree an example of the problem of, like, thinking about things in just like a completely separate little microscopic separation and leaving out the whole.
Yeah. Oh, this is what we were talking about earlier, actually. It's like holism is a very paradoxical thing to consider, actually. Right. Because to consider holism, it's like the idea of cosmology is this idea of how did we get to this place where we're at now? Mm-hmm. But to consider how we got from supposedly some nothingness to this whole that we exist now is crazy. It's like because the whole is so complex, yet we're trying to arrive at that whole through simple substances, maybe elements or atoms or whatever, somehow evolving and growing and developing complexity to arrive at a whole. Mm-hmm. It's weird, right? Because you have to go back and forth from one to the other. And
yeah, and it's challenging to start from either direction and build out without starting from the other side simultaneously and building in. It's like to go from the microcosm to the macrocosm is challenging.
It's a nice
and then
idea.
To go from the macro to the micro is also challenging, but really the more you get into it, the more necessary it is to go in both directions. It's like the bucket experiment. To really explain the bucket experiment, you have to bring in the mass of the universe, right? At a little, some water in a bucket, and you have to have the mass of the universe involved.
But how do we know the mass of the universe? It's not like you can weigh it, It's like the only way we know the mass of the universe is because we've speculated about what mass means here on planet Earth, because we understand trajectories and all this stuff. So we project that out on the trajectories of solar systems and galaxies and all this stuff that we've got these figures for. But that's kind of what has to happen. It's like you have to account for your local understanding within this understanding of the whole somehow. It's like those things they require each other.
And just not to get too impossible to talk about too quickly, but we just were looking up the mass of the photon, and the mass of the photon, the theory is, has no mass.
No resting mass.
When it's in its resting frame.
Its resting frame.
Frame of reference, but then...
That's the frame where Einstein was traveling along next to it.
Right. He
was like, okay, I get it. This is...
But then if you put a bunch of photons in a box, suddenly they have mass.
If you put them in a box, what are they, bouncing around inside the box, I guess? Or?
Which suggests that mass is some kind of interaction between waves that have no... light waves interacting suddenly create mass, but if they're just by themselves, then they don't have mass.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden you find yourself in deep paradox.
Which to me it suggests that mass is a standing wave somehow. Mass is a interference pattern in waves, which brings up Nassim Haramein's recent cool focus on attempting to derive the mass of the proton, which sounds like he's successfully, very accurately derived the mass of the proton from simply focusing on the 0 point energy.
Yep.
And then having two thresholds, like the inner threshold and the outer threshold, the Planck length, and then the proton radius as like a filter. And if you just take the 0 point energy within those two scale within that zone between the Planck length and the proton radius, suddenly you get the mass of the proton.
What a staggering idea, man.
From waves, a bunch of waves bouncing around, and you get the mass. How does that work?
Well, that brings up this idea that I'm still fascinated with in my own head. Is just this idea that particles don't emanate the wave, the field. The field gives rise to the particle.
Yeah.
And somehow that to me is so fundamental. It's like it's the only way to understand it. And also it brings up this idea that here we're looking at each other. We've got bodies and everything, but these bodies don't actually exist. They're a construction of our mind, in a sense. They're a useful construction. And within that context, they also obey laws and do all this other stuff that makes it seem very realistic. But really, the underlying structure is waveforms and energy patterns and all this nebulous.
Well, just you saying that means you're like, well, what do you mean by real? It's not real.
What do I mean by real?
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Because okay, so by real you mean solid matter or something. Like you have some definition of these bodies aren't real.
They're no more real than a dream.
But you do accept that there is something called real.
Dreams are real.
Okay.
Yeah. So something's real.
And waves are real.
Really?
So what is it about bodies that isn't real?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I was hoping to discover in this conversation with you, I'm hoping you can elucidate this for me.
Oh yeah, no problem. We'll find out.
Is a mechanism for the morphogenetic field, which I speculate about in
Yeah.
my book.
Yeah.
It's like I have this idea that this figure here is a representation of the solar system as a body.
Mm-hmm.
That this is the living solar system has an organization, a modular organization, which somehow this is associated with a morphogenetic field, and the fact that we exist on this heart planet, we have access to that field, which helps determine our corresponding organization of our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So that, this, if you study all of the history of mankind, you find things like in the Bible they talk about that God is made in the image of, or man is made in the image of God. The Upanishads talk about that the man is the universe is a great man, and man is a small universe. And I've actually paraphrased this to say that the solar system is a great man, and man is a small solar system. Mm-hmm. And somehow, to me, it only makes sense that all these things exist and have correspondences if we share some informational field that provides information about our form across scale, like a fractal sort of...
or symmetry or asymmetry. Like there's an underlying system or substrate or mechanism, symmetry, something that holds rigidity, tension, elasticity, charge. That it is that which charge flows through in the form of an electromagnetic interaction. It's that a point charge.
Tell me what you mean by charge, Thomas.
Well, currently, as I understand it, according to Carver Mead and Andre Assis, I think that's how you say his name, Brazilian, we don't know what charge is, electric charge. This potential charge, there's different words for it.
But there's positive and negative charge, right?
Right. And we know a lot about how it interacts with, metal, how it conducts, how it conducts through metal. We know a fair amount about electromagnetic waves in the form of light and radio waves, microwaves. We can use this characteristic of space in that it can conduct charge across it. We're able to measure radio waves traveling through space. And even we've been able to measure that gravity waves travel at the speed of light or electromagnetic wave propagation through space. But we don't know what it is. It meaning that is what charge itself is. Like, we don't know what it is that is charge.
So is charge a binary only thing? It's either plus or negative?
Yeah, or
neutral.
Neutral, yeah. Non-existent. But there's still something that is not charged.
But neutral, would that just imply that there's a balance of charge?
You could draw. I think you could draw that. Like there is the something, the mystery that is absent at charge, and just because there's no charge there doesn't mean that the whatever it is that conveys that charge isn't there.
It's like I think of the blood as an electromagnetic organ, but I don't think it carries charge. But I think that it does have charge. It does have electrons. It's got rotate. It's got electromagnetic fields involved, but they cancel each other out to a certain extent, I think. So that as a whole, it's a neutral of charge object. But I also believe that that the blood is a morphogenetic field representation in the body. just like what I call the magnetoform. Although now that we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago where my description in my book of the magnetoform and magnetospheres and all of these electromagnetic structures don't reach into the depths of the morphogenetic field, which is see, this is what I'm trying to figure out.
I see. And I'm just noticing there's something weird happening with my camera here. So let's just pause it for a second. Okay, we're back. So yeah, the morphogenetic field that is related to the electromagnetic fields.
It's like a more subtle.
Not necessarily the same thing. Yeah, there's something, and I guess in my way of thinking about it, what you're referring to as the morphogenetic field, there's a big overlap in the Venn diagram of what that is that overlaps with the substrate that entanglement is happening at. I know you've mentioned the phrase quantum potential from Bohm. I haven't studied Bohm, so I can't speak to that. But then to me, it also overlaps with what Nassim Haramein is talking about when he's talking about the sub-Planck 0 point waves. There's like these waves that are superluminal and that are the components of the little pixels, which are these little Planck spheres, that then a whole bunch of those make up the proton.
Planck toruses, right?
Planck toruses, right. But that the Planck torus is almost like, my understanding of what he's saying is the Planck torus is like a higher order derivative or somehow a something that manifests out of these sub-Planck wave interactions. And these sub-Planck wave interactions that are superluminal, and so superluminal that he basically described it as they're basically traveling across the universe so quickly that they can basically, within the time span of one rotation of a proton, they've basically traveled across all of the universe and back, and have passed through all other protons in the universe. And so there's like this resonance across universal spatial scale between all sub-Planck, spatial dimensions within the span of one rotation of the proton. And so to me, they're like, these are like the sketches, the like cave drawings that are attempting to describe this substrate within which there are these symmetries or asymmetries that then give form to these higher order things like protons and EMF field light. The propagation of light waves across space is happening as almost like a wave interference pattern on this superluminal 0 point energy field that's in the sub-Planck
quantum field or whatever.
Quantum potential field. I don't know. There's all these different names.
Yep.
So,
but how would that relate to? I mean, I know this is maybe a big jump from there up to a morphogenetic field.
Yep.
It's like I know. I mean, what I know about David Bohm is probably very little. I've gathered a bunch of terms which I think have significance, and I know those terms, but I don't claim to understand every nuance of
or consequence or
like a. So, but one thing that I have, anyway, I'm just gonna
Yeah,
wing
for
it. Is this idea that he says that the quantum potential is also referred to as a pilot wave or a matter wave, and this idea that any particle at any scale actually has an associated waveform associated with it that extends out to infinity and is non-local. And he talks about it in terms of I don't know if he talks about it, but someone was talking about it in terms of, is the word creote or something like this? It's like a three-dimensional map where you've got valleys and channels, which it's like the particle moves based upon the information that surrounds it of that field. It's so it moves in particular channels. And somehow I look at that and I try to extrapolate that up to this much larger scale, and maybe I'm missing a bunch of steps along the way or something. But just to me, that description of a three-dimensional map with channels, that to me is what I imagine the morphogenetic field to look like, except with a lot more detail, like organic detail, where it's like there's, between the magnetospheres are also involved in this, plus the plasma flow from the sun. The plasma flow can be directed into the north and south poles, causing the northern lights, and so that indicates that the plasma flow can be influenced by the magnetospheres and vice versa. And all of those influences, I somehow imagine that is the structure which is being shown. Let's hit the field. We've got the field. Where does it go? Yeah. So this is Earth's magnetosphere. Here is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Mercury is here. And the sun would then be releasing plasma, which is interacting with these magnetospheres, and it's like it flows in one side. These are polarized, so it goes in, if plus and negative, for instance, we talked about charge. So certain things are going to flow in one direction and certain things are going to be moving in another direction, in a sense, right? And it's a big leap of the imagination, but somehow this to me is a hint of this morphogenetic field of the solar system as a whole.
It's a hint.
It's a hint. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that phrase, quantum potential, like you were just talking about, and a way he was describing it as, this matter wave that's interacting out to infinity, has a lot of overlap with what I hear Nassim Haramein talking about with these sub-Planck waves, superluminal waves, and especially in the sense that those are related to the higher order manifestation of a proton, which is the fundamental particle of mass and stuff. So I guess to me there's a lot of overlap between those, and Nassim Haramein even references Bohm a lot, and is quite a few times in the talks I've heard him give, he's kind of contrasting, the standard model of subatomic particles versus Bohm mechanics, or Bohm's description as being more holistic and more descriptive, more understandable model of what's going on.
A more reasonable model in a certain sense, because Bohm's model is what they call a causal model, whereas as far as I understand, the standard model is not causal. It's actually the opposite of
kind
causal.
of like trying to understand a car by smashing cars into a bunch of little pieces and then looking at the pieces and trying to understand what a car is or
Right.
something. You
Yep.
know, and like, okay.
But I guess I'm still looking for like an understanding of these toruses, these quantum
The Planck,
the Planck
Planck length toruses.
Planck length torus. Could those be? It's like if a torus to me has a structure that is polarized.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a right hand rule. You've got the
Mm-hmm.
that's a positive and negative somehow.
Yep.
So I look at these as maybe these are like the digital foundation for an informational net
Mm-hmm.
of whether they're arranged in this way or that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about earlier about plasma. They generate all these. I've got this book by I think it's Alphen. I forget the guy's name, but it's got all these beautiful organic depictions of the flow of plasma forming just the weirdest structures, but they all give me this really organic picture.
Mm-hmm.
And with layers and of negative and positive fixed over and over like this, and just and so somehow I don't know what level those specifically are referring to, probably macro levels, but I would imagine that at a micro level they could have corresponding levels of complexity, and if that information can be stored in the orientation of those, I don't know. It's just one thought.
Yeah, or expressed or manifested. Yeah. And that overlaps, correlates with Nassim Haramein talking about these structures as the fundamental pixels of reality. You know, and the
pixel is on or off, right?
I mean, in our current digital, it's either on or off, but you know, we're getting into quantum computing, which has not just on or off.
Be on and off at a million different places or whatever.
And I was just learning about there's a company that's working on a CPU that runs on light that basically is using light as the fundamental, the equivalent of the transistor, and they're able to do all sorts of kind of more fuzzy logic stuff that relates to AI at a much faster computational level, but it's not as precise. It's not as, because it's not on or off, it's not as, there's error in it. You know, it's less precise for like mathematical you wouldn't use it for doing, money banking transactions.
Linear transactions.
But so Nassim Haramein is talking about those as being the pixels, and then is talking about the propagation of these sub-Planck superluminal waves as being the refresh rate of the universe, right? Because these propagate across the universe and back within the time span of one rotation of the proton.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So it's kind of like the metaphor of a screen, where the pixels are refresh at some refresh rate.
Yeah, you got to have a refresh rate. You do, yeah.
Wow. And then this also kind of reminds me of the Bashar notion of, like, you can model all of reality as like a single point moving so fast, that it's basically,
is this that theory there's only one electron, this sort of thing?
I don't know what that theory is that you're referencing, and this is just my meager attempt to try to rephrase Bashar's idea that I heard a long time ago. But this idea of you can model reality is just one single point that travels so fast, and it's like interacting with its own path, and as it crosses through any area more than once, then the higher order things kind of build up from there, from the path, the interaction paths of this one point, and it's you can basically build a whole higher order interaction spin, waves, particles, all the other things, mass, from this one fundamental idea.
That sounds a little bit almost like Teilhard Moritz talks about that there's two types of awareness. There's inherent awareness and evolving awareness.
Mm.
And inherent awareness would be that one thing that is moving, and then evolving awareness would be individual things that are less fundamental than that one inherent awareness, that moving particle sort of thing is what that sort of reminded me of a bit.
Yeah, and then it also reminds me of Baha'u'llah saying, all knowledge is of one point, but the ignorant have multiplied it.
Yeah, right. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And then he also had, back in the 1800s, said, split the atom and lo, behold, the sun is manifest or something. So he's talking about what I interpret to be nuclear fission, splitting the atom back in the 1800s, way before there was scientific exploration of that idea.
Yeah, right. Gnosis.
Yeah.
Yep.
What now, Keith? How does this relate to your question? You were wanting to explore
this
morphogenetic field idea. Yeah, I mean, I guess to me, this to me is like this is the avant-garde of scientific theory right now, right? I mean, Carver Mead's talking about, the first time I really somewhat understood the entanglement experiments, the Nobel Prize winning experiments, was Carver Mead describing it with words on the Demystify Sci podcast.
He was on one of those?
Yeah.
Carver Mead was?
Yeah.
Interviewed by Shiloh and Anastasia?
Yeah. Yeah, we watched part of it long time ago.
Man, I don't remember that they were involved in that, though. I remember watching a Carver Mead something.
Yeah. Well, he was on there, and he explained in words.
Oh, fuck, no, I do remember it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
He described the entanglement experiment setup.
Yep. Yeah, okay, it's coming back to
and it was in his description of it that I, for the first time, kind of like, oh, okay, I'm beginning to get the paradox. There's a paradox in there. And it was when he was talking about this forward and backward in time propagation of the potential field, because the wave is only going to get through the filters if the setup has the right resonance for it to pass through the filter, but it doesn't have any way of knowing that the setup is right unless there's some kind of communication going backward in time, because the potential field or potential, propagates at the speed of light. But there's a paradox in that there's some, and so my takeaway from that is like, right, there's some more fundamental symmetry or asymmetry. There's some more fundamental substrate of reality that was already in resonance, so to speak, that which resonance, electromagnetic resonance, arises out of, was already in place back when that potential started propagating in one direction.
Yep.
The underlying substrate of reality was already organized in a way that allowed that resonance to begin forming, the electromagnetic resonance to begin forming. There was some underlying resonance that was already there and that had already happened at a much more instantaneous time scale. So there is something else that is faster than the speed of light. There is some other symmetry, some other resonance that is happening at a speed faster than the speed of light to then set up the conditions for the propagation of the electric potential.
Yeah.
To then allow that wave to pass through the filter to the receivers,
Isn't this exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of this, right? We were talking about the it's like you have to know the whole
Right.
before you can, it's like, and that knowledge of the whole, I think, is what would be the instantaneous, the non-local.
Right.
The whole, there's no way to know the whole locally.
Uh-huh.
It's just a fact, right? I mean,
No,
how could you know the whole?
Sure. But I mean that though, but to contradict that or to argue against that, you can, like, the significance of the entanglement experiment is that the significance is it set up a situation at a local scale that proved that there's something else going on. Right?
Wait, what do you mean something else going on?
It basically, the significance of that experiment is it basically deprived us, it basically showed that our current theories about electric potential, propagation of light, whatever, resonance, electromagnetic resonance, are insufficient to explain that experiment, what happened in that experiment. And so
our mechanism is inadequate.
The model is inadequate to explain it.
Yep.
And so it kind of forced there to be, so now there's a void there, and it's basically proving that there's something else going on there that our current model is inadequate to explain. Our model is missing an important thing, which has to do with this more fundamental, instantaneous level of reality.
But couldn't it be stated that what it's missing is a non-local awareness of the whole? Wouldn't that explain?
Oh, well, wait a second. Isn't it missing a non-local awareness of the whole?
Yeah.
When you say it, what are you referring to by it? You're talking about the model?
Yeah, I'm talking about it. If you doesn't the EPR experiment, that's the way I think of it, is all about locality.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea that you can't explain the results without invoking a non-local awareness of some whole, which you can narrow down to just include the experimental setup. Mm-hmm. But I imagine also has to include, once again, the bucket experiment. Mm. That experimental setup is part of another universe. It's maybe. It's like you have to...
Yes and no. Yes and no.
All right.
And I say no in the sense that if simply there was a model that allowed for some other resonance to be happening at a superluminal speed that the electric potential was a derivative of, you still don't necessarily need some idea of the whole in order to have that. You just simply add into the model that, well, there's another layer that's superluminal.
Yeah, it's David Bohm's implicate order sort of thing.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay. So that's where I say no, is, well, you don't need that model of the whole in as much as you don't need a model of the whole to say that there's an electric potential wave that's propagating at the speed of light. Like, that's not...
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
it doesn't need to be taken that far.
Right.
You don't need to include the whole to get across...
But, and where I say yes to that question is, I think, less proven or less suggested by this experiment and more proven by another experiment that Carver Mead likes to mention a lot, which is if you shoot a laser beam and split it into at a particular frequency and split it and then run one half beam through a fiber optic cable and then the other one, and then join them back together into a sensor, you'll find that as that coil gets rotated, the alignment of the wave of the laser frequency does a full wavelength. What do you call it? Where you have a wave that then becomes out of phase and then back into phase.
Yeah.
It does a full phase
phase shift yeah.
through a 360 rotation. And that if you then use 3 of these for three different axes of the 3D, dimensions,
wow.
you can have a laser interferometer, I think is what it's called, or it's basically you can use this laser fiber coil as like a rotation measurement device, so you can very accurately measure rotations in three-dimensional rotations.
Wow, that's amazing.
But the significance of this is beyond that, which is that if you then just leave it sitting on a table for 24 hours as the Earth spins, those frequencies, that interference pattern goes through rotation that tracks the background, the mass of the universe. It basically it's phase locked to the universal frame of reference, which is significant because it suggests, unlike in these thought experiments of Einstein or in this definition of the photon having zero mass in its rest frame, it implies that there is no arbitrary rest frame, that the rest frame of the universe is the preferred frame of reference, that there is a preferred frame of reference at all dimensions, and that having this little laser interferometer, you can take it into the deepest cave and cut it off from all EMF, put it inside of a Faraday cage, and it's having zero interactions with any kind of field, and it's still phase locked to the universe. How is that possible?
That's the craziest thing, man.
And so to me, that is a local experiment that you can't explain without the whole. Right?
Yeah.
And that's why that experiment is so significant and such an important, it's such an important experiment. And this is why I appreciate Carver Mead so much too, is because he has very eloquently described kind of these fundamental, in his book Collective Electrodynamics, kind of his opening point is that the past 100 years or whatever have been the dark ages of physics, because we've been so kind of distracted by the statistical nature of the quantum or the subatomic dimension.
Yeah.
And he points out that there was this debate between Bohr and Einstein, and Bohr won, but he was also a very charismatic guy. And the problem from Carver Mead's perspective is that we had insufficient devices or things that were acting like quantum behaving systems that we could measure and describe back then. And that since then there's like at least 10 macro scale devices or setups that have quantum behaviors or what he calls coherent. Like he puts it into coherent versus incoherent systems, and that coherent systems have quantum like behavior. And he says the most like fundamental example of this is a superconducting coil.
Yep.
And so he then basically used the superconducting coil and measured it and analyzed it and was able to derive like the fundamental equation of current and voltage and frequency and wavelength from a macro scale measurable quantum coherent system. And he's saying like if Einstein had that back then, he would have won that debate. And so what I appreciate about Carver Mead is like he's like saying, look, we've got experiments, we've got devices, we've got things that we didn't have 150 years ago that we can then build a more unified model of reality that unifies the quantum, subatomic all the way to the macro scale. And it seems like that's also what is helping Nassim Haramein with his ability to derive the mass of the proton, and that even though he happened upon that, shortly before there were updated measurements of the mass of the proton, and he was able to predict some very specific details about, I think maybe it was the radius of the proton. I can't remember if it was the radius or the mass of the proton.
It was the radius.
The radius. That then subsequent detailed measurements then validated.
Yeah, in fact, I think it was the fact that they tried with the mass for all that time that was holding them back or something, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah. And, Alpha G was his key. Yeah. Anyway, I forget what the start of that rant was.
That whole thing about the three-dimensional...
Yeah, the laser interferometer.
The laser interferometer. Was that I'm trying to remember the details of that talk. Was that in the context of the bucket experiment that he started to go off on that?
It's a parallel concept, right? It's the significance of that experiment is it proves that there's some whole system that local experiment is interacting with, and it's impossible to explain that. Well, yeah, I think that is the best experiment to support this idea that you have to have an idea of the whole in order to explain that at the local level. Because with the entanglement experiment, you could add in this there's some other resonance, a superluminal resonance,
right,
that then explains why there's the light speed resonance propagation, and it's easier to do that. Whereas this one, you're dealing with an interaction between the local and the universe.
Yeah, that's
by definition.
Yeah, it seems incredibly significant to me that it's this three-dimensional thing that extends out to infinity, basically, and somehow it.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eloquent.
And so, just looking at that, so then, so those light waves of the laser beam, right, that's being split into two beams, is interacting with some kind of fundamental primordial substrate, symmetry, asymmetry, that is somehow has the information about the universe at the local level, so much so that they're like, it's like this map of the universe, this holographic map of the universe, or holographic structure of the universe at any point in space and time, such that if you take this little box with this sensor in it and try to isolate it however you possibly can, it's still going to interact with this fundamental map of the structure of the universe.
It's a monad.
Yeah. And so light is interacting, right? The light waves are interacting with something that inherently has the rest frame of the universe in it. And that is present in every point in space. Every point in space is somehow entangled with or involved in the structure of the universe on a level that is more fundamental than the light wave is, and that the light wave is expressing it or interacting with it.
This is why people have. I imagine that this is why people have a Big Bang, right? Because to me, it's like when I hear that this idea of non-locality, to me, only makes sense within the context of a oneness at one time, which is still present yet spread out. I know that's kind of a cheap way of saying something, but
Mm.
it's like it just how can non-locality exist at these distances that are um, so profound,
Yeah.
unless that it was part of this same thing at one time. It's like otherwise,
Or it was part of the same thing at one time, or is part of the same thing at this time, right? But right, this is that kind of more, the only way that we can understand reality is with our human brain models that can only understand reality with the things that we can touch or see or hear, or
locality. It's like everything we do is
3D stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're steeped in locality.
Yep.
Yet somehow we're not. We're also...
We're just beginning to be able to measure and discover that there's some other much more simultaneous, instantaneous, non-local layer of reality that we're just barely beginning to discover. Is my way of saying what you're talking about. Because like there's the temptation, I think, like just the fact that you brought up the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Is this temptation to have everything have a start, middle, and a finish, and we have to be able to have a story for all of that, and we can't really talk about a mystery in the present without having an explanation for where it came from, how it started.
Well, once again, it's that whole, right? It's like the two ends of the whole.
Mm.
You've got the whole over here in the beginning. This how did we get to the whole? This complex whole, from how did not just complexity, but conscious complexity, awareness of self. It's like there's a duality inherent within the whole. So there's a duality of complexity and simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
Parts that simple parts have to be arranged to create complex parts, right? It just makes sense, It's like somehow how did we get from oneness to multiplicity, for instance, right? I mean, these are it's paradoxical. It's I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to phrase the question actually in a good way.
Well, where my mind goes in hearing that, what you're saying just then, goes straight to Nassim Haramein's description of the relationship between these subplanck waves to the Planck scale tori that are the pixels, and then up to the proton. Like that, the relationship, those scale relationships and the resonance interactions between those different levels is the best I've heard so far of anybody that has attempted and been able to have a coherent, even if it's just an outline, even if it's just like a sketch, like that is the most tangible model or words or framing of that relationship between this whatever this is that's superluminal and would explain Carver Mead's laser interferometer, and the relationship between that mysterious non-local interconnectedness between all that is, and what is mass, where did particles, how did those come out of this primordial substance. The Nassim Haramein's mass of the proton is the closest, the best explanation I've heard so far.
Yep.
And it's like, but I mean, there's still mystery in that, right? It's like you don't necessarily understand what it is in the sense of this fundamental bubbling positive negative charge 0 point energy fluctuation. Like we still don't know what the charge is, but we're like that model is closer to to like showing this very mathematically precise relationship between that and then this Planck scale torus type thing, which is the pixel, and then how the proton is made up of these little pixels that have spin and charge and polarity.
I mean, a proton has plus charge, right? And then...
Well, so this, we get into another layer of what I think is really interesting. It has plus charge when it's in a dynamic relationship with an electron, right? But what's a neutron? And there's something about when you have a bunch of these particles packed together in a nucleus, sometimes there's some that have positive charge and some that have neutral charge.
Yeah. And
there's some, I think he even, Nassim even referenced this idea that, well, there's a little bit in the current, like there's some kind of relationship in mass too, between, it almost seems like a neutron has the mass of a proton plus an electron, but that electron just isn't mobile in the way that a proton is. So there's something about in an atom where you've got a bunch of protonic things in the nucleus, you've got X number of electrons that are mobile, and those are correlating or in a dynamic relationship with the protons that have positive charge.
What do you mean electrons that are mobile? You mean they're in a orbit?
They're in an orbit, whereas there's slightly more mass. I think this is my very limited understanding, is in the neutrons. There's a tiny bit more mass there that maybe is because that electron isn't mobile in a.
Yeah, right. I remember this.
There's something there where, okay, a proton has charge, but what is charge? Right? Because to what degree is charge some kind of dynamical flow relationship between, and even what is an electron? We keep wanting to think about these things as a particle-like thing, but really an electron has a cloud-like.
But a proton is different. A proton apparently is the most stable structure. It's the reason they call it a fundamental particle is because it has existence over a profoundly, at least for us, long period of time, right?
Well, but even a proton is not just a spherical thing. It's in a it's like a standing wave, three-dimensional standing wave shape that's it's undulating and vibrating and pulsing.
So it's not a static object,
right?
But it's also not it maintains, the fact that it maintains a charge means that it also maintains a certain, I would think anyway, that it maintains a certain content.
Yeah, or is maintained.
Or is maintained, right? Yeah, I know. Once you start to go back and forth, you never know what's causing what anymore. It's
yeah. But to get back to this primal cause thing, like you referenced, David Bohm is it's a causative model.
Yeah.
And the primal cause is this quantum matter wave that's moving around and is creating these higher order things. And to me, there's a lot of overlap between that and this Hermín's model of the origin of the mass of the proton is coming from these superluminal subplanck waves that are then interacting or what I keep saying an interference pattern or a standing wave that then forms into this Planck scale torus, and then then these higher order resonances then form into this stable protonic form, but it's still undulating and resonating. But it has, to me, it's it's the best description of that in wave language is a standing wave. To me, it's easiest for me to think about it as a standing, it's an interference pattern or a standing wave in this much more non-local 0 point energy fluctuation that's pervading all of reality.
Here, let me bring this up. This might be a little crazy, but
Okay.
So I'm trying to make sense of this morphogenetic field in terms of this is a modular organization of these astronomical bodies.
Okay.
And we've been talking about protons.
Yep.
And one proton and an electron is a hydrogen atom, right?
Yep.
And 2 protons and 2 electrons is a helium atom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can build up these atoms into molecules,
Mm-hmm.
right? Helium is a molecule because it has 2 atoms,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Or 2 protons.
2 protons.
Yep.
And
Or helium is an atom, not a molecule.
helium's an atom.
Right.
Okay, right.
Yep.
So a molecule, like water, is a molecule, right?
Right.
And water has two different atoms, right?
Types of atoms.
2 different
It's
types
got
of atoms.
3 atoms. of
So
2
in other
different
words,
types.
you can build up these composite structures
Mm-hmm.
out of these atoms, which are just standing waveforms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's this waveform that somehow, once again, you're looking at it from a whole, trying to work your way back, and you've got all these waveforms in terms of plasma flows and magnetospheres and everything, creating these stable configurations of bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I would look at that in terms of molecules. It's like our body is made up of cells, which the cells are made up of molecules, right? So I'm just trying to
proteins and
yeah. I guess I'm just saying that maybe we can benefit from. It's like, to me, the value of this, that the solar system is a great man is a small solar system, is that it's a step in the direction of the even greater thing of that the universe is a great man and man is a small universe. I mean, the difference between the solar system and the universe is still unimaginably huge, right?
Right. No, but I think it's really great this way that you've organized it, because it really emphasizes the resonance between the human body and the solar system on the solar system scale.
Yep.
Like, that's much more of an understandable relationship,
Yeah, it's
than
much more comprehensible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think also it's like molecules. It's like molecules. There's very complex molecules, of course, which you probably wouldn't be good to start there, but it's like there's a standing wave, and it's like that heme ring. This is an essential part of my theory, is that the heme ring is actually, I forget how many carbons it is, but it's not a bunch of them. It's I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 carbon molecules, something like that. And they form a ring, and then you've got 4 nitrogen atoms, and held at the center is an iron atom. And the idea is that there's a free electron. That free electron, again, whatever the heck that is, right? But somehow there's this free electron, which, what is that thing going to do? Is it going to just sit and buzz in one location on that ring?
No way.
No, of course. It's going to be circulating, right?
There's a current. There's a circular current flow, which implies there's a magnetic flux.
Exactly, right? So we're looking for
which is the curl in the electric potential, is what we call magnetic field.
It's curling, yeah. It's got
an orbit or a circular
flux, yeah. So this structure somehow arises out of a field, and it's a molecular field, or anyway, it's a lot closer to the atomic. This 0 point, maybe not a lot closer, but it's still closer than we are trying to explain this. Like, you have to go in both directions, I think.
Right.
It's useful to try to move in both directions and say, what is going on here with these fields?
It seems necessary. Like, that's what we were talking about at the beginning. It's like, or maybe earlier before the podcast, it's like there's almost this necessity to be talking in both directions and at both scales simultaneously. Like, you can't get there just macro to micro, and you can't get there just from micro to macro. I mean, you can, but you very quickly run into things where you're basically needing to address the macro while talking about the micro, and vice versa.
And you also have to recognize where we are. We're at the center of this scale up and scale down. And somehow I think that that's fundamental. It's like we are physics had this tendency to want to write us off. It's like we're not necessary. We're just describing this objective universe out there, and we just happen to be around to look at it. But
right, like we are at this very interesting middle position of scale between the proton and the observable universe.
Right.
Like right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the Planck length in the universe. I don't know. I know Nassim Haramein's done some fun work with that, where he's shown this almost linear graph of scale and how all these things are kind of evenly spaced on this graph, and then we're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's really useful to try to fill in the steps in both directions, and to see it in terms of the fields giving rise to these particles, but also to recognize that if this is correct, then this structure probably has an application in both directions. In other words, correspondence across scale. In other words, life. Where does life stop? Does it stop at the human scale? Nothing below is all inanimate. If it goes from humans to the solar system, I speculate, well, then that probably implies that it also goes out to the galaxies, that a galaxy is somehow a living organism. That's my speculation. And if a galaxy is a living organization, then what's the next step up? A super galaxy or whatever it is, right? A cluster of galaxies. All the way out to me, the universe has to be an organism. It's got to be an organism. So maybe it's organisms all the way down, like turtles, right? It's like maybe what do we know about a proton? A proton, they've been shattering protons, and they're filled with all this complexity also. Now it's not the complexity which has sustainability in terms of like a proton exists over x to the number something squared or whatever, right? But still, it's like if we can use correspondence across scale, then I think that we can move through the what do you call them? Atoms and molecules. Molecules, especially bioenergetic molecules in the body. If we look at them in the correct sense, that these are living beings also in a certain sense. They have some existence. They're part of this living process in the same way that we are. Then, and this also brings me up to my, I know I'm not giving you a chance to respond.
No, I don't mind.
I'm just kind of rambling.
Yeah, do it.
But I wanted to talk about in particular, what does it mean to have a living solar system? That we exist in a living solar system. To me, that's so much different than this idea that we exist in, that we just happen to be accidental life that somehow emerged out of this dead, inanimate, mechanical solar system.
I mean, another way of saying that question, or I guess deduction from that, or is almost like it suggests that living organisms on a planet is almost fundamentally part of the organization of reality. Like wherever there's a sun and a planet, there's going to be life to some degree on those planets. That's going to be somehow an expression of the structure of the planets and in that solar system.
Yeah.
There's going to be in a very dominant relationship between the biological structure of the organisms on the planets and the planets of the solar system.
And awareness. It's like, where does awareness stop? It's like the Toltec teachings, once again, I find myself drawn to them. It's just this idea that their cosmology is based upon, it's a cosmology of awareness. And it starts out with the awareness of a duality inherent within it, and that is manifest as like a male and a female, but an awareness of that there's a known and an unknown is actually at the very beginning, and the known is the male principle, and then so it's like there's the first evolution is this recognition of something out. I don't know what's out there, but I know that I'm knowing that there's something out there. That's that first thing, and somehow that creates. It's that awareness is fundamental to life, not to a dead universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you start then with the cosmology of awareness, then you end up with a cosmology that includes living organisms much easier than if you just start with this idea of a big bang, and there's these flowing away of substances, structures at the beginning.
Can you talk like this? This to me brings up the kind of the original, like you have a really nice almost like Genesis story of the original symmetry, asymmetry out of which structure emerges.
Oh yeah.
Can you explain that cross of creation kind of idea?
We've got an illustration. Maybe you could find it.
Okay.
But yeah, I wrote a book a long time ago called In the Garden, and it was based upon the Enneagram, which is a strange idea, but the Enneagram is a figure that has it's got 9 points around a circle, so 40 degrees separate each point, and it's got 2 separate figures in there. One is a triangle with the point at the top. Then there's a 6-sided figure, which has vertical symmetry. And I grew up very religious and read the Bible starting at an early age. And I've always been fascinated with the creation story in the Bible, which is, Genesis 1 through 3 basically is a creation story. The first one is the cosmos, which is 6 days. So the 6 days of creation are in the first chapter. And yeah, there's where is it? No. I think it's back. I think you missed it. No, I guess not. I don't see it. There it is, right there. Yep. So this is a description of what happens on the third day here. So the first day is as described in the creation story in the Genesis, is the creation of fire. So that would be, here's active fire, passive fire, and this right here is the, I guess here, start with this one here. Okay, so this is the first day of creation according to, if you look at this as an elemental creation. So,
and just by the way, the viewer can't see where you're pointing your finger, so you'll have to use either the, just describe it with words.
Okay, so this is a triangle, what I call the first triangle of creation, and the top point is what I call the creator point. This is that point is the original, the first impulse of creation. And we don't know what started that impulse which fills this circle. But it starts here, it fans out, it fills this circle, and it comes to a point opposite the impulse point. Because once it fills the circle, it's got nowhere to go until it arrives at the exact opposite. And so it creates a polarity across that circle of active and passive. And in the Bible, it refers to and God created light. On the first day, there was light and darkness. So it's talking about light and darkness is active and passive fire. Then on the second day, if you go to this one here, you can still see the creation of fire in the background there, but then at right angles, and actually it's more like, it should look like this. So you've got one creator point is in the plane of the screen here. Let's call that one fire. And then water would be perpendicular to the plane. So fire then is referred to as the firmament in the creation story. And water is on either side of that. And by the way, if you think of this active and passive as creating the spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum, this is what this is leading to, is the creation of what I call the electromagnetism, basically. Because electricity is associated with fire, magnetism is associated with water. Now this is a poetic description by people long before Faraday came along and laid out all the rules of this, but I think that's what they're trying to describe, is a creation of electromagnetic potential. And so this fire in one direction, water is coming back at it, but in a perpendicular dimension. So you create this thing, what I call the cross of creation. And water and this never stops. That impulse is continuing to this day. It first created this structure, and water is at angles to it. In other words, water is in relation to fire, just like magnetism is in relation to electricity. So you've created this standing wave of electromagnetism. And then at the end of the second day, water is approaching what was the original creator point of the fire, right? And basically the circle has become a sphere at this point. So you have this structure which has volume to it. So what happens? It can't rebound off of that point. All it can do is, and at this point you've got active and passive could be like called charge in a certain sense. It's active is plus, passive is negative. Same with water. You've got active and passive above and below the firmament. And then if you look at it, you've got an unbalanced plus, plus, negative, negative. However you look at it, it's broken symmetry. And that broken symmetry then results in when it tries to approach that creator point, it can't do that. So you've got on one side of the firmament is fire, water. On the other side is another water, fire, plus, negative, negative, plus, whatever it's. So you create a dualism, a creation of a dualism on the third day, which is, if you imagine that you've got this sphere of electromagnetism, now it starts, you've got two creator points, one on either side of the firmament that, show them this right there. So see, it tries to approach this where it says fire right there, that's the original creator point. It can't get to that, so it spirals off, and it creates this spiraling energy where one side is channeling through the electromagnetic standing wave. And to me, that each of those creates a particular channel which works its way back towards the earth. In other words, it's like collapsing. It's cavitating is actually a better way of looking at it. If you call the 0 point field which this would emerge out of the primal waters, it's not water in the same sense that this water and fire are there. It's like primal. It's the primal substance would be a better word.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 0 point field, and so there's this channeling of the electromagnetic current through that field, searching for the earth. It creates the earth in a certain sense as it falls back away from the fire. So you're creating space around the fire, the original fire creator point, which that space is hollowing out the sphere. So the waters are gathering. There's the creation of a spectrum from a very subtle energies to a much more solid. In other words, mass is emerging out of nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
So the earth is what happens when this cavitation creates plants. To me, the cavitation, because it's two-sided, there's this breaking of the symmetry. It forms multiple channels. In other words, the duality gives rise to a multiplicity on either side. And the multiplicity is plants. And the plants...
And there's a very strong relationship molecularly between the heme ring and the heme ring and the chlorophyll.
Chlorophyll, exactly, yep.
They're almost the same molecule.
Yeah, the difference is that the heme has iron at the center. The other one has magnesium. Is it magnesium?
I don't remember.
I can't remember. Some difference like that, but it's not a huge difference.
Yep.
The structure is exactly the same. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that this is a cosmology which gives rise to plants on the third day of creation, which is very interesting because it talks about the creation of the sun and moon on the fourth day. And to me, it's like the plants are creating the complexity of the channeling of this earth and air, and earth separates water and fire from air and vice versa. And it's hard not to be able to point out.
I do have you in the. We can see actually kind of where you're pointing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A little bit.
So anyway, it's just another. It's an alternative cosmology, which I think is worth considering.
Yeah.
Because it's based upon this awareness of the dualities right at the beginning, and the creation of plants. Rudolf Steiner says plants don't grow out of the earth. Earth grows out of plants. And that has always struck me as just one of the most profound things. It's like the particle doesn't emanate the field gives rise to the particle. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's like plants give rise to the earth.
Interesting.
Plants are part of the field, right? They are the field in a certain sense. But then through the process of repetition, it's like they create substances, like fractal substances that build up along the channels. And then that fractal substance somehow gets melded into the moon in a certain sense. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's a poetic description of what, I don't know, to me it's no worse, or maybe not much worse or better than a Big Bang Theory. Mm-hmm. It's just another way of, conceptualizing an idea.
I like it a lot more than the Big Bang Theory. To
me too.
It's much more organic, and there's like a continuity to it. It has more of a, it's to me it's easier to imagine like the primordial, the 0 point field, the primordial, undulating, charge coming into
infinite potential,
infinite potential, but like a dynamic, just vibration wave, the Om, the word of God, Om,
right? Exactly.
And then out of that, little asymmetries start forming, and then
I know, right?
Then stuff starts to coagulate together, and gravity being the shadow of pressure from all directions from this this ohm, then as soon as there are two particle like, things that have formed, standing waves, then they're gonna shade each other from the the waves that are coming in all directions, and then they're naturally going to be kind of pushed together.
Yes.
Because they're shading each other from the waves that are interacting with them from all directions, and then the larger and larger, then the proton forms, and then away we go.
Not to mention this also, if you imagine that this before this was filled with anything, that it was filled with this primal substance,
mm-hmm.
that primal substance would have been coherent, and it would have been entangled.
Right.
It's like, so in other words, anything that happens to that primal substance happens to the whole. So you're starting
mm-hmm.
with the whole already there,
mm-hmm.
and you're entangling it with all of this progression, development, evolution
mm-hmm.
within the whole.
Yeah.
It's all, so in other words, this is explains how you develop locality within non-locality also.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing
like
in its favor,
Yeah. It's a I like that it's in this middle ground between, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It's like that reference to that primordial vibration, the 0 point field, in other words, that's just, vibrating and full of that cause of that primary cause, but then from there, but anyway, the in the Genesis, it's all words. So to me, this is a nice, like, diagrammatic picture version of that puts it in, helps the mind have like a spatial relationship with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it correlates a lot with what Nassim Haramein's trying to do with talking about the mass of the proton kind of arising out of this underlying 0 point energy field, the primordial.
Right, and scales, yeah.
Yeah, and like he said, like, what it was, he was joking about the what's kind of the criticism of like over unity devices is it kind of require, there's an old term of the machine that just runs forever.
A perpetual motion.
Perpetual motion.
Yep.
It's like, well, look, what about the proton?
Yeah, the proton is...
they're just going to keep vibrating forever. Like, that seems pretty perpetual motion-esque. There's something that's keeping the proton vibrating.
Yeah, he's adamant about that, actually. That, it is a perpetual motion machine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what it is.
And that's the closest, I think, we have to start there on like the microscopic level of just accepting that 0 point fluctuation that's happening across all of space. That is this primordial something that's just going to keep on something. And we don't know what it is. We can't explain why or what or whatever, but it's there. And once you really like factor it in like he's doing, then oh wow, suddenly the mass of the proton pops out, and the Niels Bohr statistical, whatever, the little particles bouncing around, random particles, doesn't explain the mass of the proton. Or
no.
And you like it's not simply, but by giving respect, so to speak, to this primordial 0 point energy, then all sorts of higher order understandings are possible that are just impossible if you try to, say, oh, well, it all basically balances out, oh yeah, it's fluctuating and there's positive and negative charge and it all just cancels out, so therefore we don't have to think about it. You then lose, but that's where all of the energy for the higher order things is coming from, that fluctuation,
It's got to be part of the whole.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
Mm-hmm. And the part of the local.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's but yeah, and you can't explain it.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is.
Right.
I mean, but just like you can't, just like any hole, there's no way to explain that hole.
And you can't explain how the universe seems to it's very likely to keep going past where we can observe.
Yeah, I would think so.
This whole like egocentric Big Bang mindset of like, oh, as far as we can see, that's the edge of the universe. And that all used to be, X number of years ago. That was, the universe began from X number of years ago because we can see that far. Like, that's such a idiotic way of interpreting the data, it just makes me so annoyed whenever
Yeah, just that whole thing it's ridiculous. The more you think of the Big Bang, I know I'm preaching to the choir here with you, but just the Big Bang is this conception of, it's so ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous. I'm so glad that you're saying this because I know.
Well, yeah, I mean,
at some points in the past, you've given it a little bit more standing ground, and I just.
Well, I gave it the standing ground that my only thing in favor of the Big Bang is that it provides a model for entanglement, because everything was gathered together in one substance.
Right. But it's that again is also, I would argue, insufficient definition of entanglement. Like it's a definition of entanglement that is deriving itself from the limited matter, electromagnetic, speed of light model of everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But still, it's like it has that in its favor.
It sure.
Whereas,
but only to the extent of you limiting yourself to this archaic thing where we give ourselves the freedom to interpret everything based on our limited understanding of what is.
But see, that's what's useful about this model is that it's saying that the whole started out entangled in a certain sense. That it was this coherent whole, and then complexity is built up within the whole.
But again, like using the word entangled, I feel like is to some degree confusing because
before there's anything to entangle.
Because the word entangled is derivative from this very limited model of like attempt to write a story for this more fundamental layer of reality coming from the perspective of the limitation of the speed of light.
Yeah, you're absolutely.
And so it's just kind of shooting, it's like sticking a stick in your front tire if you're riding a bike, and like as soon as you use that word, you're like, oh, I'm like crashing myself because there's so many limitations based on the origin of that word. Whereas what I think is like by avoiding the word entangled in your model here allows it to orient and to align more with Nassim Haramein's subplank superluminal waves and Bohm's, a matter wave that's interacting with the whole universe or at and those are both non-local inherently and those are not limited by the speed of light, whereas the word entangled is so entangled in the current limited paradigm of the speed of light being the limitation of the concept of
yeah.
Anyway.
One last thing. Can we do one more subject?
Sure.
This book here, The Lost Gospel of the Earth, is it's pointing out that religion and science have both done a disfavor for the Earth, in that we look at it as a mechanical object when it should be looked at as a heart planet of a living solar system. So I guess I'm trying to, in my own mind, think what would it, how is it's like to re-sacralize the earth. How can we? That's what we need. Is for our society to once again realize just how sacred is this heart planet that we're this is our home, right? Is on this heart planet. And a heart planet has lungs, digestive system. It's an ecological awareness that we somehow have lost. We don't have an ecological awareness anymore. People don't care about ecology. They don't care about nature. They're afraid of nature. Most people are, they don't want to walk barefoot in the grass anymore. They don't want to, it's, people just want to exploit the planet. And it's like the idea, species are dying off. Well, we don't need them. The owls are dying off. Who's going to kill the mice? We'll build a better mice trap, We don't need owls. We don't need these things. It's insanity, right? It really is a literal, we've created an insanity for our society. And I just don't see how we can get out of it without like some structured attempt to create a religion almost for this solar system being.
A scientific religion.
A scientific religion.
I love it. That is what Resonance Radio is about. At some point
You like religion.
I like religion and I like science.
And I
think they are compatible with each other.
I think you should be the pope of this new religion.
And I think science without religion is dead, and religion without science is superstitious.
Religion is meaning, right?
Okay.
It's at the heart of.
I feel okay. That's kind of like a minimal definition of religion, but go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying that science doesn't care about meaning almost. It's like we've always relied on our religion to provide us with meaning, and science to provide us with everything else, utility, right? So that's why I think we've got to combine the two. And
we have to, in order to do that, it requires that we free ourselves from cult-like thinking, because the problem with science and religion, the biggest problem is our tendency to just accept dominant narratives, dogmas, and which is like cult-like, oh, well, this is what we believe because that's just what the dominant narrative is. And so that's a human thing. That's our tendency to accept what the tribe thinks, because that's our survival is based on being accepted by our tribe. And it makes sense. We evolved in tribes, and being accepted by our tribe was more important than being right or wrong about some
you get
trivial
ostracized by your tribe. You're in trouble.
Some trivial thing about the world was less important than being accepted by our tribe. But that has also kept us, now that we're in a global community, global context, it can also deprive us from being able to have a more coherent and unified understanding and model of ourselves in the universe and the relationship between the two.
I mean,
hold on just a sec. Okay.
So one last question is, you've pointed out to me that science is not, I shouldn't be appealing to science necessarily.
Well, scientist, which again is that identity of the authorities of what the scientific model of reality is.
Would it be easier to appeal to religion?
Religionists?
Well, to the religious drive in people, as opposed to the scientific, I want you to understand this. Or would it be better to present this figure to them as this is a holy figure? It's to make it a...
Yeah. I think their current dominant paradigm is the Church of Science right now. Right now in the world, the dominant narrative is a very science-y paradigm. you
Yep.
know, and religion has fallen into a lot of disregard and disrepute for, you know, a lot of very good
A lot of
reasons.
reasons, yeah.
But I like Teo and Merez's idea of, well, what most people call religion could better be called churchianity, which really gets at that kind of like dogmatic cult like thinking.
Yeah.
And it's more about the identity and belonging in which group you're a part of, and you know, doesn't actually have to do with what true religion is, which is more of a mystical thing. And I think that relates to the solar system is a great man is a small solar system, or I forget how you phrased it, but
Yeah.
because you're getting at this kind of mystical relationship between the individual, and not just the individual in the abstract, but my own subjective experience of existing and my connection with the living solar system. That there's a mystical interaction there.
Yeah.
Mystical, for lack of a, like, I think this is where it gets into the science of religion, is because what's exciting to me about what we're talking about of this more fundamental layer of reality, the morphogenic field, the quantum potential, the sub-Planck superluminal wave, 0-point energy field, like these are all different words for this, the word of God in the first sentence of the Bible, you know, in the beginning was the word.
The beginning was the word, yeah.
Like that, what's exciting about where science is getting to now is it is very much this over, like, nexus point resonance with religion, which the fundamental idea of religion, you know, in the beginning was the word, and the Om in Eastern religion, and the embodiment or the actual experience of that in our own bodies. And like there's a consequence of what your model suggests is a way to potentially even predict certain subjective experiences in our body based on certain orientations of planets and in solar system.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, yeah.
And so and this was actually something I was thinking about when I was reading the book down at the river, you know, trying to read it with an open, like a blank slate, open mind, is like, ooh, exciting to think about the idea of, well, why not try to take this like try to come up with some testable model, like come up with some questions or some ways of trying to test the model, and how that would look would be predicting some kind of subjective experience or some subjective way of experiencing reality based on some planetary alignment, and then surveying or you know, interviewing people, and have some way having some kind of data gathering that could either confirm or, you know, some kind of model of relationship between subjective experience and, you know, the planets or the solar system.
Yeah. And see, I think, I mean, you know, I'll say the word astrology, right? We're talking about astrology here. But even more than that, we're talking about, I think, oneness with God.
Yeah.
Right? To be one with God, and I'm not claiming that figure is God.
Right, I know.
Right? I am claiming that figure is part of God, though. Just like we're part of God. It's a step in the direction of God. And that it can only help you if your goal in life really is to, as a religious person, to become one with God, to know God closer. You can't hurt yourself at all by studying this figure and wanting to know what its configuration, what it's made of, and how that relates to you.
Yeah.
That to me is part of being religious, is knowing more and more about the nature of God.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I just
And what, how do you get closer to understanding God without trying to understand God's creation? Like, in understanding God's creation, which is reality, is the only thing we have to look at.
except for the Bible, which was
Well, but the Bible is part of the creation.
yeah.
So, I mean, even in that, that's an example of, well, there's something that you're studying some words that were written down by mystics a long time ago.
And strangely enough, most of those words, none of the Ten Commandments, for instance, say anything about pollution,
Mm.
say anything about, reverence for the
Mm.
land,
Mm.
which is strange to me. It's like it's wrong to do all sorts of things to other people, but you can exploit the land, you can exploit this heart planet of this living being,
Mm.
and it's never even considered. It's like, to me, it's a big negative in terms of our supposed inspired scriptures.
Mm.
To have left out reverence for the land
Mm.
I think it was done deliberately also.
Mm. I mean, there's some evidence that the more mystical Gospels were left out. The Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Thomas.
Yeah, exactly.
Were much more about a mystical oneness with reality, and with God, with the Word of God.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I think there's some, and the what is it? The Book of Enoch is more recent missing piece to the story, which some people theorize is the closest thing there is to most likely a direct writing of Jesus.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Very interesting.
Kind of a source for some of the other gospel stories. And anyway, I think there's some substantiation for the possibility that there's more there that was intentionally removed in order to create kind of a Roman Empire oriented co-option of the more mystical, deeper religion. And there's also the idea that a lot of what we think of as Christianity came from Paul, who was a Roman, who was completely outside of the inner circle of what Jesus's inner mystical teaching framework was.
Right.
Like, it's pretty clear that, there's also evidence that Jesus went to India too and went traveling.
Jesus,
and like that he's like his ideas very much overlap with and correlate with Eastern mysticism and Eastern religious, but not just religious, but yogic, models and like the yogi. I just went to a talk with a Hindu yogi who moved here to Penn Valley, who's like super, like he was living up in caves at 15,000 feet in the Himalayas, and
Whoa.
like he's talking about this. Like this Indian, Vedic tradition that goes back to the post-Ice Age, like 15,000 years back, and they were astronomers. He talks about how Pythagoras went to India, and the Pythagorean theorem he basically brought back from the mathematicians of India. It wasn't even he didn't discover it; he just brought it to Greece, and even Greek culture or civilization, he was even this Hindu Swami was suggesting that that was actually like a movement out of India. Like the Greek culture was like a Vedic movement.
It makes a lot of sense,
India.
actually. Yeah.
So anyway, that all to say that the modern version of Christianity, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it's missing a lot of the original models and what we call religion this day is churchianity. It's a bunch of different churches that are having identity battles, and missing like there's very little attempt on the part of religionists or churchianists to try to arrive at a coherent assemblage of what is common between all of our belief systems. Let's focus. Let's have a grand, worldwide gathering of religions and try to, arrive at what do we all agree on? Like, what is the common essence here of religion? What can we come up with? Can we agree on what true religion is? And that's the obstacles to that are very similar to the obstacles to having a grand unified theory in science too.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of reputations and
dogma
and
yep.
And also it's just hard. It's a lot of hard work and having to deal with egos and people
and people are preoccupied with a lot more important stuff on social media and
nowadays. And then like, why bother? No one cares.
Right.
Except our 3 subscribers at Resonance Radio on YouTube.
Yeah, right. Hey, by the way, I want to shout out Resonance Radio, Thomas Spellman, programmer of Monad, and thank you for letting me talk about these thoughts with you, man.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure and a joy, and let's keep doing it.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah. And soon, Resonance Radio will be on Nostr, because Nostr is the new decentralized, free social protocol that lets you bring your identity with you and leave any app that you don't like and take it to a different app that you like. No more walled gardens owning your data and your social graph. You bring your social graph and your data with you. You are in control of your own identity.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. Soon. See y'all soon.
All right.